Duh. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. The phone call came at 10:15 on a Friday morning, and within 3 minutes, my entire world shifted. But I had no idea that my first instinct to share my joy with my son would lead me to overhear the most devastating conversation of my life. I was in my bedroom folding laundry. Daniel's old t-shirts that I still washed for him, even though he was 34 years old and perfectly capable of doing it himself. His wife Vanessa's delicate blouses that required special care. I didn't mind. After losing my husband Richard 8 years ago, and my daughter Sarah 12 years before that, taking care of Daniel was all I had left. My hand smoothed over one of Daniel's shirts, the blue one Richard had bought him for his college graduation. My eyes drifted to the photos on my dresser. Richard in his firefighter uniform looking so proud and strong. Sarah at 16 just weeks before the car accident that took her from us. And Daniel caught between them in a family photo from 20 years ago when we were whole. After Sarah died, something in Daniel changed. The warm, protective older brother became distant. Cold, even. I told myself it was grief. We all processed loss differently. When Richard's heart gave out 6 years later, the doctor said it was genetic, but I knew it was a broken heart. Daniel pulled even further away. Then he met Vanessa. Mrs. Chen. The voice on my phone was professional measured. This is Robert Patterson, attorney for the estate of Lorraine Mitchell. My breath caught. Aunt Lorraine, my father's older sister, the woman who'd sent me birthday cards every year with a crisp $20 bill inside, even after I turned 58. The woman I'd driven 2 hours to visit every few months, especially these last 6 months when she'd gotten weaker. I'm calling to inform you that Miss Mitchell passed away peacefully last Tuesday. 5 days ago. And I was just finding out now. I'm so sorry, I whispered, sinking onto the edge of my bed. The same bed I'd shared with Richard for 23 years. Miss Mitchell left very specific instructions regarding her estate, Mr. Patterson continued. You are the sole beneficiary, Mrs. Chen. She's left you 3 properties, her primary residence in Palm Springs, a duplex in Riverside, and a commercial building in Coachella Valley. The combined estimated value is $4.8 million. The room spun. $4.8 million. I heard Mr. Patterson's voice continue something about paperwork and probate and timelines, but the words blurred together like watercolors in rain. Mrs. Chen, are you still there? Yes, my voice came from somewhere far away. I'm here. I can't believe it. She left a note with her will. Would you like me to read it? Please? His voice softened, and I could tell he was genuinely moved by what he was about to read. For Margaret, who treated me like a mother when everyone else forgot I existed. You called every week. You drove 2 hours just to have lunch with an old woman. You held my hand in the hospital when I was scared. You are the daughter I never had. Use this to finally rest Margaret. You've worked hard enough. With all my love, Lorraine. The tears came then, hot and fast and unstoppable. I'd loved Aunt Lorraine. Truly loved her. Not for her money, I hadn't known she had any, but because after Richard died and I felt so alone, she was the one who called me every Sunday evening just to talk. She never made me feel like a burden, never made me feel invisible the way Vanessa did. I ended the call with Mr. Patterson promising to come to his office Monday morning to begin the paperwork. $4.8 million. My first thought wasn't about houses or cars or vacations. It was Daniel. My beautiful boy, who'd been living with me for 5 months now, him and Vanessa, because they'd fallen on hard times. $28,000 in credit card debt, a failed business investment, lost their apartment. I'd taken them in without hesitation. Of course I had. He was my son, my only living child. And now I could help him. Really help him. Pay off those debts, give them a fresh start, maybe even help them buy a house of their own. The thought filled me with something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Maybe this money could buy back my son's love. Maybe it could make our family whole again. I stood up, my legs shaky, and walked to my bedroom door. My heart raced with a mixture of grief for Aunt Lorraine and joy at being able to help my son. But as I opened the door and started down the hallway, I noticed something on the hall table that made me pause. A brochure for Sunshine Senior Living. I picked it up, confused. There were handwritten notes in the margins in Vanessa's neat script. 3BR house equals $380K. Monthly fee $3,200. Pension covers it. A cold feeling crept up my spine, but I pushed it away. Maybe they were helping a friend, maybe. Then I heard their voices drifting up from the kitchen. Daniel and Vanessa talking quietly. I should have called out, should have announced myself, but something in Vanessa's tone made me stop at the top of the stairs. "Brian, we can't keep living like this." Vanessa's voice was sharp, frustrated. "It's been 5 months. 5 months of living in your mother's house, eating her food, listening to her talk about church and her friends and the same recipes over and over." I stood frozen, one hand on the railing. "I know, Jess." Daniel's voice. "My son. But what do you want me to do?" "We still owe $28,000. "That's exactly what I'm saying. We need to sell this house." My breath caught in my throat. "Sell my mother's house." Even through the shock, I heard the hesitation in Daniel's voice. "Think about it, Daniel. She's 58, widowed. This house is worth at least $380,000. She doesn't need all this space. 3 bedrooms for 1 person. It's wasteful." "Where would she live?" "Your cousin Matt works at Sunshine Senior Living. He says they have openings. It's clean, nice. They have nurses' activities. She'd have people her own age around. Isn't that better than being alone here all day?" My hand tightened on the railing until my knuckles turned white. "You're talking about putting my mother in a nursing home." Daniel's voice was quieter now, uncertain. "It's not a nursing home, honey. It's assisted living. And think about it, she's alone here every day while we're at work. That's sad. At Sunshine, she'd have companionship. Her pension would cover the monthly fee. We sell the house, pay our debts, buy our own place, and she gets proper care. Everyone benefits." The house Richard and I had bought when Daniel was 2 years old. The house where I'd rocked both my babies through nightmares and fevers. The house I'd worked 35 years as a hospital nurse to pay for cleaning up after ungrateful patients and demanding doctors, my feet aching and my back screaming. "She'd never agree to it," Daniel said quietly, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. "Then we don't ask." Vanessa's voice turned cold, calculated. "We do what my friend did with her mother. Conservatorship." My blood turned to ice. "Conservatorship?" Daniel sounded confused. "You're her only child, Daniel. With a doctor's note saying she's got early dementia or uncontrolled blood pressure, which she does take medication for, by the way a judge will grant it. Then you have legal authority to make decisions for her own protection." "She doesn't have dementia, Vanessa. But she does have high blood pressure. And that anxiety disorder after your dad died, the one she takes medication for. We emphasize those things. Say she's forgetful, confused sometimes. My brother Marcus knows a lawyer who handles these cases all the time." Silence. A long, terrible silence. "Daniel," Vanessa's voice softened, turned coaxing. "We have to do something. I didn't marry you to spend the rest of my life living with your mother, and she's not going to live forever anyway. When she dies, you inherit this place. We're just speeding up the process, making sure she's safe in the meantime. Let me think about it." "There's nothing to think about, baby. Either we take action, or we stay buried in debt living here until she dies. And that could be 20, 30 years. Do you want to be 50 years old still living with your mother?" I backed away from the stairs, my hand over my mouth to suppress the sound threatening to escape. 35 years of nursing. 8 years of widow's loneliness. 5 months of cooking their dinners and washing their clothes and tiptoeing around my own house so I wouldn't disturb them. And they were planning to take my home. Lock me away. Wait for me to die. I walked back to my bedroom on legs that didn't feel like my own. Closed the door. Locked it. Then I sat on the edge of the bed next to the laundry I'd been folding for them, and I let myself cry. But only for 5 minutes. Then I dried my eyes, picked up my phone, and started making calls. Because Margaret Chen Maggie to my friends wasn't the weak, confused old woman Vanessa thought I was. I was a nurse who'd worked in the ICU for 20 years. I'd dealt with life and death situations demanding surgeons and families in crisis. I knew how to stay calm under pressure, and I knew how to fight. The first call I made was to Eleanor Park, my late husband's older sister. Eleanor was 65, widowed herself, retired from teaching. After Richard died, Eleanor had been the one who checked on me every week, who brought casseroles I couldn't eat, who sat with me in silence when words were too hard. "Eleanor," I said when she answered, "I need to see you. Today. It's urgent." She didn't ask questions. "Come now. I'll put coffee on." I didn't tell Daniel or Vanessa I was leaving. I simply walked downstairs 20 minutes later, purse over my shoulder, car keys in hand. They were in the living room now, watching TV like they hadn't just been plotting to steal my life. "Going out, Mom?" Daniel asked, barely looking up from his phone. "Just some errands. I'll be back later." My voice came out steady. 35 years of nursing had taught me how to keep my face neutral even when everything inside was screaming. "Can you pick up milk?" Vanessa asked, not even glancing my way. "We're out." "Sure," I said, and walked out the door of my own house. The drive to Eleanor's took an hour and 10 minutes. I didn't cry. I just drove hands tight on the wheel radio off, listening to the sound of my own breathing. Every few miles, my mind replayed what I'd heard. She's not going to live forever anyway. We're just speeding up the process. Eleanor's house was a small ranch style in a quiet Fresno neighborhood. Her garden was beautiful roses and lavender the way she'd always kept it. I knocked on her door and she opened it, took one look at my face and said, "Come in, honey." We sat at her kitchen table, the same table where Richard and I had eaten Thanksgiving dinner 20 years ago, back when Daniel was just a teenager laughing at his uncle's jokes, back when we were a family. "Talk to me," Eleanor said, pouring 2 cups of coffee she somehow knew I needed. And I told her everything. The inheritance, the conversation I'd overheard, the conservatorship plan, the nursing home, all of it. By the end, I was crying again. Not the quiet tears from earlier. Deep gasping sobs that came from somewhere I'd been keeping locked away for 8 years. "He's my son, Eleanor. My baby. I gave up everything for him." My voice broke. When Richard died and the life insurance barely covered the funeral, I worked double shifts so Daniel could finish college. I drove a car with no air conditioning for 6 years so he could have something decent when he turned 21. After Sarah died, I held him while he cried. I let him lean on me because that's what mothers do, and now he's planning to lock me away like I'm nothing, like I'm already dead. Eleanor reached across the table and took my hands in hers. Her grip was firm, steady. "Margaret Chen, you listen to me. You are not nothing. You are a woman who worked herself to the bone for 35 years, who raised 2 children and then buried one, who took care of your husband until his heart gave out, who visited Lorraine every month when no one else bothered. You are strong and good and decent. Then why—" I couldn't finish the question. "Because some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone," Eleanor said quietly. "And some people never learn to appreciate it at all. But Maggie, I need you to hear this. Daniel isn't acting alone. That woman has her claws in him. That doesn't excuse what he said. No, it doesn't. But it means he might not be completely lost yet." She squeezed my hands. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. I needed someone to know. Someone who wouldn't think I was crazy or being dramatic. You're neither of those things." Eleanor stood up, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a business card. "This is Catherine Wong, best family law attorney in Fresno. She helped me with some estate planning after Robert died. Call her Monday morning. Tell her everything you told me." I took the card with trembling fingers. "And Maggie," Eleanor's voice softened, "you don't owe Daniel anything. Not after what he's planning. Do you hear me?" "Nothing." I nodded, but even then, even knowing what I knew, a small voice inside me whispered, "But he's my son. My only living child. If I lose him, I have no one." I stayed with Eleanor for 3 hours. She fed me lunch soup and sandwiches, comfort food, and let me cry and rage and grieve. Because that's what it was. Grief, the death of the son I thought I had. The death of the relationship I thought we shared. But something else settled inside me too, underneath the grief. Something hard and sharp and necessary. Clarity. I'd spent my whole life taking care of other people, cleaning up their messes, putting their needs first. 35 years of nursing, wiping strangers' bodies, holding their hands as they died, going home with my back screaming and my feet bleeding. 8 years of widow's loneliness, eating dinner alone, talking to photos of dead people. 5 months of being invisible in my own home. Not anymore. By the time I drove home, the sun was setting. My eyes were swollen, my head ached, but my mind was clear. When I walked through my front door, Daniel was in the kitchen making dinner, something he rarely did. The smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the air. "Hey, Mom," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I'm making pasta. There's enough if you want some." For a moment, just a moment, I wanted to believe everything I'd heard was a misunderstanding. that this was my Daniel, my boy, making dinner for his mother out of love. But then Vanessa walked in, saw me, and her expression flickered with something I'd seen before, but never understood until now. Calculation. "Maggie, perfect timing," she said brightly. "We wanted to talk to you about something." My heart began to pound. "Oh, let's eat first," Daniel said quickly. Too quickly. We sat down at the dining room table, the three of us. Daniel served the pasta. Vanessa poured wine. Everything was normal, pleasant, civilized. Except I could see it now. The way Vanessa touched Daniel's arm, steering him. The way she caught his eye and gave tiny nods. The way she was running this show. "So, Mom," Daniel began, setting down his fork, "Vanessa and I have been worried about you." "Worried?" I kept my voice neutral. "Since Aunt Lorraine died," Vanessa jumped in smoothly. "You've seemed stressed, distant, and we know you're here alone all day while we're at work. That can't be good for your mental health." My fingers tightened on my fork. "We've been thinking," Daniel continued, and I could hear the rehearsed quality in his voice, "that maybe it's time to think about your future, about making things easier on yourself." "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "This house is a lot of work," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with false concern. "The yard, the maintenance. And you're on that fixed income. What if something breaks down? What if you need expensive repairs? We worry about you carrying that burden." "Are you suggesting I sell my house?" I asked directly. Daniel's eyes flickered with relief that I'd said it first. "We're suggesting you consider simplifying your life, Mom. There are really nice senior communities now, places like Sunshine Senior Living. Matt works there, and he says, 'I know where Matt works.'" Silence. Daniel recovered quickly. "Right. Well, these places are great. You'd have people around activities healthcare on site. You wouldn't have to worry about anything, and your pension would cover the monthly costs." "And what would happen to this house?" I asked, my voice perfectly calm. "We could sell it," Vanessa said, not even trying to hide her eagerness now. "Use the money to pay for your care, and any extra could go into savings for your future medical needs." My future medical needs. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. They'd been planning this speech, perfecting it. "That's very thoughtful of you both," I said carefully. "Let me think about it." Relief washed over Daniel's face. "Of course, Mom. Take your time. We just want you to be happy. That's all." He hugged me goodnight, a brief, awkward embrace that felt like betrayal. After they went upstairs, I sat in the living room in the dark, staring at the photos on the mantel. Richard in his firefighter uniform. Sarah in her prom dress. Daniel's college graduation. My phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. "How are you holding up?" I typed back. "They asked me about moving to Sunshine tonight, just like you said they would." Her response was immediate. "Call Catherine first thing Monday morning. Don't wait." I looked around my living room. At the couch, Richard and I had picked out together 30 years ago. At the scratches on the hardwood floor from when the kids used to race their toy cars. At the height marks on the doorframe where we'd measured Sarah and Daniel every birthday. This was my home, my life, my memories. And I'd be damned if anyone was going to take it from me. But I had to be smart. I couldn't just confront them. Not yet. Vanessa had already proven she was 3 steps ahead, manipulating Daniel, planting ideas in his head. If I came at them directly, she'd twist it. Make me look paranoid, unstable, exactly what they needed for their conservatorship case. No, I needed to protect myself first. Legally, financially, completely. And then only then would I show them exactly who they were dealing with. Saturday and Sunday passed in a strange fog. I cooked breakfast. I did laundry. I smiled when they spoke to me. And all the while I was planning. Sunday evening I Googled Sunshine Senior Living, read the reviews, looked at the photos of smiling elderly people engaged in arts and crafts, as if that could replace a lifetime of memories in your own home. The monthly cost was $3,200, just like Vanessa's note had said. I also Googled conservatorship laws in California. What I found made my blood run cold. With a doctor's signature and a judge's approval, Daniel could legally take control of my finances, my medical decisions, my life. He could sell my house without my consent. He could decide where I lived. I would become legally a child again. Powerless, unless I acted first. Monday morning at 9:00 a.m., I sat in Catherine Wong's office. She was younger than I expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen it all. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with an expression that was part sympathy, part fury. Mrs. Chen, what you're describing is elder financial abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. Both are criminal offenses in California. I don't want to send my son to jail, I said quickly. I just need to protect myself. I understand. So here's what we're going to do. She outlined the plan with precision, her voice calm and professional, and for the first time since Friday morning, I felt like I could breathe. First, the inheritance would be placed in an irrevocable trust. Daniel couldn't touch it. Ever. Second, my house would also be transferred into the trust immediately. Third, I would create a new will removing Daniel as beneficiary. Everything would go to charities, the hospital where I'd worked, St. Vincent's Church, the scholarship fund in Sarah's name. Fourth, we would file paperwork for a declaration of competency preemptively blocking any conservatorship attempt. If they try to move forward with conservatorship anyway, Catherine said, we'll have documentation proving you sought legal counsel, made rational decisions, and were fully competent. Their case falls apart. How long does all this take? The trust and property transfer we can have done by end of week. The declaration of competency requires a medical evaluation, but I know a doctor who can see you Wednesday. Dr. Helen Morrison, geriatric specialist. She'll do a thorough evaluation. She leaned forward. Mrs. Chen, I need to ask you something difficult. What outcome do you want here? Do you want to confront your son? Do you want him out of your house? I thought about it. About Daniel at 6 years old crying because he'd scraped his knee. About Daniel at 16 proud in his first suit for junior prom. About Daniel at 25 standing next to Vanessa at their wedding looking so happy. About Daniel last week planning to lock me away. I want him to understand what he was about to do, I said quietly. I want him to see it. Really see it. And then, my voice caught. Then I want him gone. But I need to know he'll be okay. I need to know he can survive without me. Catherine nodded. Then we wait. We protect your assets first. And then when everything's secure, you decide how to handle the confrontation. But Maggie, may I call you Maggie? I nodded. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that confronting him might not change anything. Some people, when they're caught, they double down. They blame everyone else. They never accept responsibility. I know, I whispered. But he's my son. I have to try. End of part 1. To be continued. Would you like me to continue with part 2? Let me know if you'd like any adjustments to part 1 first. Hey. By Wednesday afternoon, I felt like I was living 2 separate lives. In one life, I was Margaret Chen, the dutiful mother. I woke up early to make breakfast for Daniel and Vanessa. I packed Daniel's lunch the way I'd done since he was in elementary school: turkey sandwich, apple slices, a granola bar. I asked about their days. I smiled when they spoke to me. I folded their laundry and placed it neatly on their bed. In my other life, I was someone else entirely. Someone strategic. Someone who'd spent 2 hours that morning in Dr. Helen Morrison's office completing cognitive tests and memory exercises, while a geriatric specialist evaluated every aspect of my mental capacity. Mrs. Chen, Dr. Morrison had said, removing her glasses and smiling at me warmly, you're sharper than most 40-year-olds I see. Your blood pressure is well controlled with medication. Your anxiety is being managed appropriately. There is absolutely no sign of cognitive decline, confusion, or any condition that would warrant conservatorship. I'll have my full report to your attorney by tomorrow morning. I'd driven home with that small victory sitting in my chest like a warm stone. They couldn't touch me now. Legally, I was protected. But emotionally, I was breaking apart piece by piece. Because I still had to go home. Had to sit across from my son at dinner. Had to pretend I didn't know he was planning to steal my life. Wednesday evening, I made pot roast. Daniel's favorite since he was 8 years old. I'd made it every year on his birthday, even after he moved out. Even after he married Vanessa. The smell filled the house. Beef and carrots and potatoes, the same recipe my own mother had taught me 50 years ago. Daniel came home from work at 6. He worked in sales at a car dealership, though he'd been suspended twice in the past year for missing quotas. Vanessa arrived 15 minutes later. She worked as a medical billing specialist at a clinic, though she was always complaining about her boss, her coworkers, her salary. We sat down at the dining room table, the same table where I'd helped Daniel with homework for 12 years, where we'd eaten Christmas dinner as a family, where Richard had sat at the head carving the turkey, making us all laugh with his terrible jokes. "This looks amazing, Mom," Daniel said, and he sounded sincere. "That hurt worse than anything." "Thank you, honey." I passed him the potatoes, my hands steady. I'd had a lot of practice hiding what I felt. 35 years as a nurse teaches you that how to smile at a patient while your own world is falling apart. Vanessa picked at her food, checking her phone periodically. She did that a lot, always texting someone, always distracted. I thought it was just her generation, the way young people were always connected to their devices. Now I wondered who she was texting. Her brother Marcus, the lawyer, planning their next move. "Maggie," Vanessa said suddenly, looking up from her phone. "Daniel and I were talking. Have you given any more thought to what we discussed about Sunshine Senior Living?" I took a slow sip of water, buying time. "I've been thinking about a lot of things, actually." "That's great." Vanessa's smile was too bright, too eager. "We could drive over this weekend just to look around. No pressure. Matt said he could give us a personal tour." "I mentioned to Aunt Lorraine's lawyer that I was considering some lifestyle changes," I said carefully, watching their reactions. "He had some interesting advice." Daniel's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "What kind of advice?" "About estate planning, wills, that sort of thing." I cut a piece of pot roast, keeping my eyes on my plate. "He said at my age it's important to have everything in order, to make sure my assets are protected." The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. "Assets." Vanessa's voice had lost its sugary quality. "What assets? I thought you were living on your pension and Social Security." I looked up at her, then holding her gaze. "Did you—" Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, we weren't trying to pry into your finances. We just want to make sure you're taken care of." "That's very thoughtful," I said. "But I am taken care of. Aunt Lorraine saw to that." Vanessa's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "What do you mean?" "I mean my Aunt Lorraine left me comfortable. Very comfortable. So you don't need to worry about me becoming a burden. I can afford excellent care if and when I need it." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. That's wonderful, Mom," Daniel finally said, but his voice sounded strangled. "How comfortable are we talking about?" I smiled. "Comfortable enough that I've decided to make some changes. I'm meeting with an estate attorney tomorrow to set up a trust. Catherine Wong. Eleanor recommended her." Vanessa's knuckles were white around her fork. "A trust? That seems extreme. I mean, why would you need something like that?" "To protect my assets," I said simply, "from anyone who might try to take advantage of me in my old age. The lawyer said elder financial abuse is shockingly common, even from family members. Can you imagine?" Daniel had gone pale. He pushed his plate away. "Mom, if this is about what we said about Sunshine—" "It's about being smart," I interrupted gently. "I'm 58 years old. I have high blood pressure and anxiety. Someone could argue I'm not competent to make my own decisions. Don't you think I should protect myself just in case?" The look that passed between Vanessa and Daniel was electric. Panic, guilt, anger, all of it flashing across their faces in the space of a heartbeat. "Of course," Vanessa said, recovering quickly. "That's very wise. But Maggie, you should know that if you're putting assets in a trust, you'll want to make sure your family is taken care of. Daniel is your only child. After what happened to Sarah—" She let the sentence trail off a knife disguised as sympathy. My hand tightened on my napkin under the table, but my face remained placid. "Oh, don't worry. I'm taking care of everything. Making sure my wishes are crystal clear. No confusion. No room for interpretation." After dinner, Vanessa claimed she had a headache and went upstairs. Daniel helped me clear the table, something he hadn't done in months. "Mom," he said quietly as we stood at the sink, "are you angry with us about the Sunshine thing?" I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He had Richard's eyes, deep brown with those little gold flecks that caught the light. Sarah had had the same eyes. All three of them gone or changed beyond recognition. "I'm not angry, Daniel. I'm just being practical. It feels like you don't trust us." I dried my hands on the dish towel, choosing my words carefully. "Trust is earned, honey, and maintained. You know that." He flinched like I'd slapped him. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. Around 2 a.m., I heard Daniel and Vanessa arguing in their room. Their voices were muffled, but I caught fragments. "Told you to wait. If she puts everything in a trust—" Your cousin needs to move faster. Can't believe you told her. I pulled my pillow over my head, but it didn't help. The voices kept coming, seeping through the walls like poison gas. Thursday morning, Catherine called. Everything's ready. Can you come in this afternoon to sign? Yes, I said, looking out my kitchen window. Daniel and Vanessa had already left for work. What time? 2 o'clock. And Maggie, bring a witness. Someone you trust completely. I called Eleanor. Can you come with me to Catherine's office today? I'll pick you up at 1:30, she said without hesitation. At Catherine's office, I signed document after document. The trust papers, the new will, the property transfer, the declaration of competency supported by Dr. Morrison's evaluation. My hand cramped from writing my signature so many times, but with each signature I felt stronger, more secure. This is all filed as of now, Catherine said, stamping the last document with a satisfying thunk. Your house is in the trust. The inheritance from Lorraine is in the trust. No one can touch any of it without your explicit permission. And this, she held up Dr. Morrison's report, makes it virtually impossible for anyone to successfully petition for conservatorship. What if they try anyway? I asked. Then we go to court and we bury them. Catherine's smile was fierce. I've handled these cases before. Greedy family members who think they can steamroll an elderly parent. They never expect the parent to fight back. And when they do, the judges don't take kindly to it. Eleanor squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, Maggie. But as we left the office, I felt no triumph. Only a deep, aching sadness. Because I'd just legally disowned my only living child. And even though he'd planned to betray me first, it still felt like I was losing him all over again. Friday evening brought an unexpected development. I was in my bedroom folding laundry again, a task that had become almost meditative in its monotony, when I heard the doorbell ring. Voices in the foyer. Daniel greeting someone. Uncle Marcus, thanks for coming over. My blood froze. Marcus, Vanessa's brother, the lawyer who specialized in conservatorship cases. I crept to my bedroom door and opened it just a crack. From the top of the stairs, I could see into the living room. A man in an expensive suit sat on my couch, early 40s, slicked back hair, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. So Daniel, Marcus was saying, opening a briefcase. Vanessa tells me you're concerned about your mother's well-being. Yes, Daniel said, and he sounded uncertain. She's been acting strange, talking about trusts and lawyers. She's never been interested in that stuff before. That could be a sign of confusion, Marcus said smoothly. Sudden changes in behavior, paranoia about finances, these are red flags for cognitive decline. Has she been forgetting things? Getting lost, having trouble with daily tasks? Well, Daniel hesitated. Not exactly, but she does take medication for anxiety and high blood pressure. There we go, Marcus said, as if Daniel had just confirmed something crucial. Those conditions, especially in combination, can lead to mental confusion. Add in the stress of losing her aunt. The grief from losing your father and sister. She's probably not in a state to be making major financial decisions right now. Vanessa appeared in the doorway with coffee. That's what we've been worried about. What if she's being taken advantage of? What if this lawyer she's seeing is manipulating her? My fingers dug into the door frame. The audacity of it, accusing Catherine of the exact thing they were planning to do. Here's what I suggest, Marcus said, pulling out papers. We file for emergency temporary conservatorship. It's a precautionary measure. We cite her medical conditions, her recent erratic behavior, the sudden interest in estate planning that could indicate she's being manipulated. I have a doctor who can conduct an evaluation. She just had an evaluation, Daniel interrupted. A Dr. Morrison. She said Mom was fine. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. Who arranged that evaluation? Mom did, through her lawyer. Exactly. A lawyer we don't know arranging an evaluation with a doctor we don't know. Don't you see how that looks? For all we know, they're working together. But if we get an independent evaluation from someone, I recommend someone with credentials in geriatric psychology, and that evaluation shows concerns. He let the implication hang in the air. How long would this temporary conservatorship last? Vanessa asked. Until we can have a full hearing, usually a few months. But here's the thing. Once we have temporary conservatorship, Daniel has authority to access her financial records, see what this inheritance actually entails, and make sure nothing inappropriate is happening with her assets. We can also prevent her from making any major financial decisions until the court decides she's competent. I don't know, Daniel said slowly. This feels wrong. She's my mother. She raised me. What if she really is fine and we're just controlling her? Daniel, Vanessa's voice turned sharp. Your mother is sitting on a fortune and talking to lawyers we've never heard of. She's cutting us out. After everything you've done for her, after taking her in when your father died. We're living in her house, Vanessa. She took us in. Because we asked her to. Vanessa's mask was slipping. We could have figured something else out, but you felt guilty. And now she's using that against us, probably planning to leave everything to some church or charity while her own son struggles with debt. The son she offered to help, Daniel said quietly. Multiple times. The son who said no because his wife didn't want to feel indebted. The room went silent. I held my breath, hope blooming painfully in my chest. Was Daniel finally seeing through Vanessa's manipulation? Look, Marcus said, his voice taking on a harder edge. You asked me here for advice. Here it is, your mother is making decisions that will affect your future. She's your only parent. You're her only child. When she dies and with her health issues, who knows when that'll be you should inherit. That's natural. That's how it works. But if she's being manipulated into putting everything in trusts or leaving it all to charity, you get nothing. Is that fair after everything your family has been through? Life isn't fair, Daniel said. My sister died when she was 16. My father worked himself to death. Fair doesn't enter into it. But you can control this, Marcus pressed. You can protect your mother and protect your future. All you have to do is sign these papers and I'll file them Monday morning. By the end of next week, you'll have temporary conservatorship and we can sort everything out properly. I watched my son sitting there, Marcus's papers in front of him, Vanessa's hand on his shoulder. This was it. The moment of truth. Would he sign? Would he go through with it? Daniel picked up the pen. My heart cracked down the middle. He held the pen over the paper for what felt like an eternity. Then he set it down. No. What? Vanessa's voice was shrill. No, Daniel repeated, standing up. I'm not doing this. This isn't protecting my mother. This is controlling her. Taking away her rights because we want her money. We don't want her money, Vanessa hissed. We want to make sure she's safe. Then we talk to her. Daniel's voice rose. Like adults, like family. We don't go behind her back and have her declared incompetent. Jesus, Vanessa, do you hear yourself? This is my mother. She's not some stranger we can just steal from. Steal? Marcus stood up, his friendly demeanor evaporating. That's a serious accusation, Daniel. I'm offering legal services to protect a vulnerable adult. If you're not interested, that's fine. But don't insult my professional integrity. Get out, Daniel said. Both of you. Vanessa, we need to talk. Alone. Marcus, thank you for coming, but we won't be needing your services. Marcus gathered his papers, his face tight with barely suppressed anger. Your loss. But don't come crying to me when you find out your mother left everything to strangers. He looked at Vanessa. Call me when he comes to his senses. After Marcus left, the shouting started. Are you insane? Vanessa screamed. That was our chance. Our one chance to fix this mess. Fix what mess? Daniel shouted back. The mess where my mother inherited money from her aunt. The money that's hers, that she earned by being a good person, by caring for someone everyone else forgot. Don't give me that saint routine. You told me yourself you resent how much time she spent with that old woman. How she drove 2 hours every month when she could barely afford gas. How she'd come home exhausted and still have to work double shifts at the hospital. Because she's a nurse? Because she cares about people. That's who she is. And look where it got her, living alone in a house too big for her. No savings, eating canned soup for dinner while everyone else got her time and energy. She gave everything away, Daniel. And now she finally has something, and you want to just let her give that away too. It's her choice. It's a stupid choice. You're her son. You deserve that money. After Sarah died, after your dad died, who was there, you held her together. You listened to her cry for years. You gave up your 20s being her emotional support because she couldn't function without you. And now when it's finally time for you to benefit, when she could finally pay you back for all those years, she's going to give it to charity. That's not fair, Daniel. That's not right. I pressed my hand to my mouth because Vanessa wasn't entirely wrong. I had leaned on Daniel after Richard died. Too much, probably. He'd been 26 years old, trying to build his own life, and I'd been calling him every night, crying, unable to sleep, unable to cope. He'd come over every weekend. He'd help me with bills when I fell behind. He'd been there, and I'd never properly thanked him. never acknowledged the burden I'd placed on young shoulders, still processing their own grief. "That doesn't give us the right to steal from her," Daniel said, but his voice had lost some of its conviction. "We're not stealing. We're securing our future. Our family's future. What about when we have kids, Daniel? What about their college funds? What about giving them the kind of life you never had because your mother was always broke? She was broke because she put me through college, because she paid for Sarah's funeral, because she kept this house so I'd always have a place to come home to. And now it's your turn." Vanessa grabbed his arms, her voice turning pleading. "Baby, listen to me. I love you. I want to build a life with you. But we can't do that buried in debt living in your mother's house. She's 58 years old. She'll probably live another 30 years. Are you going to spend the next 3 decades waiting for your inheritance, tiptoeing around her? Or are we going to take control of our lives now? By taking control of hers, by helping her make smart decisions. Daniel, I work in medical billing. I see it every day, elderly people scammed by lawyers, taken advantage of by con artists. Your mother is vulnerable right now. Grieving alone, probably not thinking clearly. We'd be protecting her. She has a doctor's evaluation saying she's completely competent. From a doctor her lawyer chose. Don't you see they got to her first, but it's not too late. We can still—" "No!" Daniel pulled away from her. "I'm not doing this, Vanessa. I can't. Can't or won't, both." The silence that followed was arctic. "Fine," Vanessa said, finally, her voice cold and flat. "Then I'm calling Marcus back, and I'm filing for divorce." My hand flew to my mouth. "What?" Daniel sounded stunned. "You heard me. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't marry you to spend my life broke living with your mother, drowning in your debt. I married you because I thought you had potential. I thought you'd fight for us, but you won't even fight for yourself. Vanessa, I'm done. I'm calling Marcus, and when this divorce is final, I'm taking half of whatever you do eventually inherit. California is a community property state, remember? So congratulations, Daniel. Your loyalty to Mommy just cost you half of your inheritance anyway." She stormed up the stairs, her footsteps pounding past my bedroom door. A door slammed. Then silence. I stood frozen in my doorway, my heart hammering. Below me in the living room, I could hear Daniel breathing heavily. Then a sound I hadn't heard in years, my son crying. I wanted to go to him. Every instinct in my body screamed to run down those stairs, to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But I couldn't move, because I didn't know if everything would be okay. I didn't know if he'd been refusing Vanessa's plan because he loved me or because he was afraid of getting caught. I didn't know if this was genuine remorse or just cold feet. And I was so tired of not knowing who my son really was anymore. Saturday morning, Vanessa packed a bag and left without saying goodbye. Daniel retreated to their bedroom and didn't come out. I made coffee scrambled eggs, set a plate outside his door. It sat there untouched for hours. By Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. Catherine Wong. "Maggie, we have a problem." My stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Marcus Hayes filed an emergency petition for conservatorship yesterday afternoon. He's claiming you're being unduly influenced by outside parties, meaning me, and that you're not competent to make financial decisions. He's citing your anxiety medication, your blood pressure issues, and the recent death of your aunt as evidence of mental instability. But we have Dr. Morrison's evaluation. We do, and we'll use it. But an emergency petition means there's a hearing scheduled for Monday morning. The judge will hear both sides and decide whether to grant temporary conservatorship pending a full evaluation. Monday, that's 2 days from now. I know, it's aggressive, and honestly, it's probably not going to work. But Maggie, there's something else. The petition was filed by Marcus Hayes on behalf of Vanessa Chen, not Daniel. I sat down hard on my bed. Vanessa? She's claiming to be your daughter-in-law and Daniel's legal representative in family matters. She's arguing that Daniel is too emotionally compromised to act in your best interest, so she's stepping in. It's a long shot legally, but it shows how desperate they are. Daniel doesn't know about this, I said. He refused to sign Marcus's papers last night. He and Vanessa had a huge fight about it. She threatened divorce. That actually helps us, Catherine said. If Daniel is willing to testify that he never authorized this petition, that he believes you're competent, it completely undermines their case. You want me to ask my son to testify against his wife? I want you to ask your son to tell the truth. After Catherine hung up, I sat on my bed for a long time staring at nothing. Then I stood up, walked down the hall, and knocked on Daniel's door. "Daniel, it's Mom. Can we talk?" Silence. Then, "Come in." He was sitting on the bed, still in his clothes from yesterday, unshaven, red-eyed. The room smelled stale, and I saw his phone face down on the nightstand, probably filled with angry texts from Vanessa. "Your wife filed for emergency conservatorship," I said without preamble. "There's a hearing Monday morning." His head snapped up. "What no? I told Marcus no. I told Vanessa. She did it anyway, without your consent. She's claiming to represent you and your interests." Daniel's face went through a series of emotions: shock, anger, horror. "Mom, I swear I didn't know. I would never, I know." And surprisingly, I did know. I could see the truth written all over his face. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. "My lawyer needs you to testify on Monday, to tell the judge that you never authorized this petition, that you believe I'm competent, that this is Vanessa acting alone." "Done." His response was immediate. "Absolutely. Whatever you need." I looked at my son, really looked at him, at the man he'd become. Weak in some ways, yes. Too easily influenced, too eager to please. But not evil, not cruel, just lost. "Daniel," I said softly, sitting down beside him on the bed, "why did you agree to any of this in the first place?" He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "After Sarah died, I felt like I'd failed. I was her big brother. I was supposed to protect her. And I wasn't even there that night. I was at a party getting drunk while she got in a car with a drunk driver. And then Dad just worked himself into the ground, and I couldn't stop that either. And then you were so sad, Mom. So broken. And I couldn't fix that." Tears were streaming down his face now. "When Vanessa came along, she made me feel like I could finally fix something. She had all these plans, all these ideas about how we could be successful, how we could build something. And yeah, some of those plans involved money from you eventually. But she framed it like we were helping you, like we were taking care of you the way you took care of everyone else. But you weren't taking care of me," I said gently. "You were taking control of me. There's a difference." "I know. God, Mom, I know. And I'm so sorry. I was so caught up in wanting to be the hero for once and wanting to fix things that I didn't see I was destroying the one relationship that actually mattered." He turned to face me fully. "I don't want your money. I don't want your house. I just want my mom back. The mom who used to make pot roast on my birthday and let me cry on her shoulder and didn't look at me like I was a stranger. I want to earn your respect back, even if it takes the rest of my life." I felt tears running down my own cheeks. "You never lost my love, Daniel, but you did lose my trust, and that's going to take time to rebuild." "I know." He wiped his eyes. "And I'll do whatever it takes. I'll testify Monday. I'll file for divorce from Vanessa. I should have done it a long time ago. I'll move out if you want me to. I'll one thing at a time," I said, putting my hand over his. "First we get through Monday, then we figure out the rest." He squeezed my hand, and for just a moment he was 8 years old again, holding on to me after a nightmare. My little boy scared and needing his mother. And I was there, the way I'd always been, the way I always would be. Sunday passed in a blur of preparation. Catherine came to the house to go over testimony with both me and Daniel. We reviewed Dr. Morrison's report bank statements, the timeline of events. Eleanor arrived to provide moral support and would also testify on my behalf. "This is pretty straightforward," Catherine assured us. "They filed an emergency petition with almost no evidence. They have no medical evaluation of their own. Their only argument is that you're making unusual financial decisions, but protecting your assets isn't unusual. It's smart. The judge is going to see right through this." But Sunday night I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining a judge signing papers, Daniel being granted legal authority over me, my life no longer my own. It was irrational, Catherine had said we'd win, but fear isn't rational. At 3 a.m., I got up and walked through my house in the darkness, ran my fingers over the kitchen counter where I'd made thousands of meals, stood in Sarah's old bedroom, which I'd never had the heart to change, sat in the living room where Richard used to read his newspaper every Sunday morning. This was more than a house. It was a lifetime of memories, and tomorrow, strangers would decide if I was capable of keeping it. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed in my best suit, navy blue, the one I'd worn to Sarah's funeral and Richard's funeral, and way too many sad occasions. Eleanor picked me up at 8. Daniel met us at the courthouse. We found Catherine in the hallway outside the courtroom. She looked focused, determined, ready for battle. "They're already here," she said quietly, nodding toward the other end of the hall. I looked. Vanessa stood there in a designer dress I'd never seen before next to Marcus in his expensive suit. She looked confident, almost smug. When she saw Daniel standing with me, her face hardened into something ugly. "Traitor," she mouthed at him. Daniel just looked at her sadly and turned away. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, more like a conference room with a judge's bench. We sat at one table, me, Catherine, Daniel, and Eleanor. Vanessa and Marcus sat at another. The judge entered a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes, Judge Patricia Brennan, according to the nameplate. "This is a hearing on an emergency petition for temporary conservatorship," she began, looking over her glasses at the paperwork. "Mr. Hayes, you're representing the petitioner." "Yes, Your Honor, Vanessa Chen, daughter-in-law of the respondent Margaret Chen." "And Miss Wong, you're representing Mrs. Chen." "Yes, Your Honor, and Daniel Chen, Mrs. Chen's son, is here as a witness in support of his mother." Judge Brennan's eyebrows rose slightly. She looked at Vanessa, then at Daniel. "I see, that's unusual. Mr. Hayes, present your case." Marcus stood, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, we're here today out of deep concern for Margaret Chen's well-being and safety. Mrs. Chen is 58 years old with a documented history of anxiety disorder and hypertension, both requiring medication. She recently lost her aunt, which has caused significant emotional distress. In the aftermath of this loss, Mrs. Chen has begun making highly unusual financial decisions, consulting with attorneys unknown to her family, discussing trusts and estate planning, making statements suggesting paranoia about family members. These behaviors are concerning and suggest possible cognitive decline or undue influence from outside parties." He paused dramatically. "Mrs. Chen's family is worried that she's being taken advantage of during a vulnerable time. They're asking for temporary conservatorship only to ensure her assets are protected while a thorough independent medical evaluation can be conducted." Judge Brennan turned to Catherine. "Ms. Wong." Catherine stood. "Your Honor, this petition is not only unfounded, it's offensive. Mrs. Chen is a retired ICU nurse with 35 years of experience. She managed life and death situations daily. She's sharp, capable, and fully competent. What Mr. Hayes characterizes as unusual financial behavior is actually exactly what any prudent person would do after receiving a significant inheritance consult with professionals, protect assets, and update estate plans." She placed a thick folder on the judge's bench. "This is a comprehensive geriatric evaluation conducted by Dr. Helen Morrison, a board-certified specialist, just last week. Dr. Morrison found Mrs. Chen to be fully competent with no signs of cognitive decline, no confusion, no impairment whatsoever. Her anxiety and hypertension are well managed with medication. There is absolutely no medical basis for conservatorship." "Your Honor, if I may," Marcus interjected. "That evaluation was arranged by Ms. Wong, who has a financial interest in maintaining Mrs. Chen's independence. It's hardly objective." "Dr. Morrison is one of the most respected geriatric specialists in California," Catherine shot back. "Are you suggesting she falsified her evaluation?" "I'm suggesting she was selected specifically because she would give the desired result." Judge Brennan held up her hand. "Enough. Mr. Hayes, do you have any medical evidence to support your claim that Mrs. Chen is incompetent?" "We're requesting the court order an independent evaluation." "That's not what I asked. Do you currently have any medical evidence? Any doctor's opinion? Any documented incidents of confusion, forgetfulness, or impaired judgment?" Marcus hesitated. "Not at this time, but—" "Then this petition is premature at best." Judge Brennan turned to Vanessa. "Mrs. Chen, the younger Mrs. Chen, you're the petitioner. What is your specific concern about your mother-in-law's competency?" Vanessa stood, and I had to admit she put on a good performance. Her voice trembled just slightly. Her eyes were wide with concern. "Your Honor, I've lived with Margaret for 5 months. I've watched her become more withdrawn, more suspicious. She barely eats. She talks to photographs. Sometimes she calls Daniel by his late father's name. She's clearly not processing her grief in a healthy way. And now suddenly there's all this money and lawyers we've never heard of, and she won't tell us anything about her plans. We're worried someone is manipulating her, taking advantage of her isolation and sadness." Does she call Daniel by the wrong name often? The judge asked. Well, I've heard it a few times. Mrs. Chen, the judge looked at me. Would you like to respond to that? Catherine nodded at me. I stood my legs, shaking slightly. Your Honor, I called my son Richard exactly once about 3 months ago when he was fixing something in the garage. My husband Richard used to do all our home repairs. Seeing Daniel in the same spot doing the same task, it just slipped out. It was a moment of grief, not confusion. I immediately corrected myself. And the eating, the talking to photographs. I'm a widow, Your Honor. I live alone. Yes, I talk to my late husband's photos sometimes. It's called grief, not dementia. As for eating, I've lost weight because I've been stressed because I overheard my daughter-in-law and son discussing plans to put me in a nursing home and sell my house without my consent. A murmur rippled through the small courtroom. That's not true, Vanessa said sharply. Actually, Your Honor. Daniel stood up and his voice was steady. It is true. I'm ashamed to say it, but it's true. Judge Brennan leaned forward. Mr. Chen, you're the son. Yes, Your Honor. And I never authorized this petition. I specifically refused to sign conservatorship papers when my wife's brother presented them to me. I told them I wouldn't participate in taking away my mother's legal rights. I believe my mother is completely competent. This petition is my wife acting without my knowledge or consent. The judge's expression hardened as she turned to Marcus. Mr. Hayes is the petitioner's husband, who is also the respondent's son, and next of kin opposing this petition. Marcus had gone slightly red. It appears there's been a miscommunication within the family. It appears, Judge Brennan said coldly, that you filed an emergency petition claiming family concern when half the family opposes it, and you have zero medical evidence. This is exactly the kind of abuse of the conservatorship system that I will not tolerate in my courtroom. She gathered her papers with sharp, angry movements. The emergency petition for conservatorship is denied. Denied emphatically. Mrs. Margaret Chen is clearly a competent adult making reasonable financial decisions. The fact that these decisions don't benefit the petitioner doesn't make them evidence of incompetence. Ms. Wong, I'm ordering that your client's medical evaluation be entered into the permanent record so that if anyone tries to file another baseless petition, we have documentation of Mrs. Chen's competency. She fixed Vanessa with a stern look. Mrs. Chen, if you file another petition without substantial medical evidence, I will consider it harassment and refer the matter to the district attorney. Do you understand? Vanessa nodded, her face pale with fury. This hearing is concluded. Mrs. Chen, you remain in full control of your legal and financial affairs, as you should be. The gavel came down with a satisfying crack. Outside the courtroom, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in days. Eleanor hugged me tight. Daniel stood nearby, keeping his distance from Vanessa, who was arguing with Marcus in heated whispers. Thank you, I said to Catherine, for everything. You were always in control of this, Maggie, she said with a smile. I just made sure everyone else knew it. Daniel approached hesitantly. Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? We walked a little away from the others. In the harsh courthouse lighting, he looked exhausted, defeated. I'm filing for divorce, he said, today, and I'm moving out of your house. I'll find somewhere— Don't, I interrupted. Don't move out yet. He looked confused. But I thought, I need some time, I said carefully, to process everything, to figure out what comes next. But Daniel, you stood up for me today. You told the truth even though it was hard. That matters. I'm not ready to forget what almost happened, but I reached out and squeezed his hand. But I'm not ready to lose you either. Not yet. His eyes filled with tears. I'll do better, Mom. I promise. I'll be better. I know you will, I said, and for the first time in weeks, I actually believed it. Vanessa stormed past us without a word, Marcus trailing behind her. As they disappeared down the courthouse steps, Eleanor appeared at my elbow. Good riddance, she muttered, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and sad and old. Come on, Eleanor said gently. Let's get you home. Home. My home. Still mine. Safe, secure, protected. As we drove through the familiar streets of Bakersfield, I looked out the window at the city where I'd spent my entire adult life, where I'd raised 2 children, where I'd buried a daughter and a husband, where I'd worked and struggled and survived. This chapter wasn't over. There was still so much to figure out what to do about Daniel, about Vanessa, about this inheritance that had become both a blessing and a curse. But for now, I'd won. I'd protected myself. I'd stood up for my rights. And that was enough. Fall. The week after the hearing passed in strange, suspended silence. Vanessa moved out on Tuesday. I heard her loading boxes into her car while I was upstairs in my bedroom pretending to read. Each thump and bang echoed through the house like accusations. Daniel tried to help her, but she snapped at him so viciously that he retreated to the backyard, shoulders hunched, hands in his pockets. When her car finally pulled away, I looked out my window. She didn't look back at the house. Not once. Daniel came inside and found me in the kitchen, staring at the coffee maker like I'd forgotten how to use it. "She's gone," he said unnecessarily. "I know. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it, for bringing her into your life, into our family." I poured 2 cups of coffee, pushed one across the counter to him. "You loved her. You can't apologize for that." "I thought I loved her." He wrapped his hands around the mug. "Now I don't even know if I knew who she really was. Or maybe I knew and just didn't want to see it." We sat in silence, drinking coffee, 2 people who used to know how to talk to each other, now strangers in the same house. "I got an email from a lawyer this morning," Daniel said finally. "Vanessa's divorce attorney. She's asking for spousal support and half of any inheritance I receive from you in the future." I felt a flash of anger so hot it surprised me. "She can't. Actually, she can try. California is a community property state. Anything I inherit while we're still legally married could be considered marital property." He laughed bitterly. "So even though I refuse to steal from you, she might end up with half of what you leave me anyway. Ironic, right?" "Then I won't leave you anything," I said flatly. His head snapped up. "Mom, I don't want—" "I know you don't, but I'm not giving that woman 1 penny of what I spent 35 years working for. Not 1 penny of what Lorraine left me. She doesn't deserve it." "Neither do I," Daniel whispered. I looked at my son, really looked at him, at the dark circles under his eyes, the way his clothes hung loose like he'd lost weight, the defeated slump of his shoulders. He looked like Richard had in the months before his heart attack, like a man who'd given up. "You made mistakes," I said, "but you also stopped before it was too late. You stood up to Vanessa. You testified for me. That has to count for something." "Does it?" His voice was raw. "Because I still thought about it, Mom. When Marcus put those papers in front of me, I thought about signing them. For at least 10 seconds, I imagined what our life could be like with your money. Before I came to my senses and realized I was planning to betray my own mother. What kind of person even considers something like that?" "A desperate one," I said quietly. "A person who's drowning and grasping at anything that might save them. That's not an excuse. No, but it's an explanation, and maybe that's where we start." Over the next few days, Daniel and I began the slow, painful process of talking. Really talking. Not the surface conversations we'd been having for years. How was work? Fine. What's for dinner? Chicken. But the deep, uncomfortable conversations we'd been avoiding since Sarah died. One night, sitting on the back porch under the stars, Daniel finally said what I think we'd both been thinking for 12 years. "It should have been me." I knew exactly what he meant. "Daniel, no, let me say this. It should have been me driving that night. Sarah wanted to go to that party and I was supposed to drive her, but I got drunk at another party and forgot. So she got a ride with Tommy Morrison, who was even drunker than I was. And she died. She died because I was too drunk to remember I'd promised to pick her up." His voice broke on the last word, 12 years of guilt spilling out into the darkness. "Tommy Morrison made the choice to drink and drive," I said. "He killed your sister, not you. But if I'd been there, if you'd been there, you might both be dead. Or you might have talked her out of getting in the car, and some other tragedy would have happened on some other night. Daniel, I spent years playing the what-if game. What if I'd insisted she stay home? What if I'd picked her up myself? What if I'd never let her go to parties? You can drive yourself insane with what-ifs. How did you stop?" I thought about that. About the years of therapy I'd gone through after Sarah died. The support groups, the medication, the slow, agonizing process of learning to live with loss. I didn't stop, not completely, but I learned to live with it, to accept that some things are beyond our control, and I learned that punishing myself wouldn't bring her back. Is that what I've been doing? Punishing myself? I think so. I think you've been trying to atone for something that wasn't your fault by destroying your own life. First with Vanessa, who I suspect you knew wasn't right for you. Then with this plan to put me in a nursing home, a plan so terrible, so unlike you that on some level I think you wanted to get caught. Wanted someone to stop you from doing something unforgivable. Daniel was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. I miss her so much, Mom. I miss Sarah. I miss Dad. I miss feeling like I'm part of a family instead of just this ghost haunting a house full of memories. I reached over and took his hand. I miss them too, every single day. But Daniel, we're still here. We're still a family, just a smaller broken one. And maybe that's okay. Is it really okay? I thought about Lorraine's letter. Use this to finally rest Margaret. You've worked hard enough. I don't know, I admitted. But I'm starting to think that maybe we don't have to have all the answers. Maybe we just have to keep trying. The following week, I got an unexpected phone call. Mrs. Chen, this is Thomas Wright. I'm a private investigator. I was wondering if I could meet with you about a matter concerning Vanessa Hayes. My stomach dropped. What kind of matter? I'd rather discuss it in person if you don't mind. Are you available tomorrow? We met at a coffee shop in downtown Bakersfield. Thomas Wright was in his mid-40s with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen too much of humanity's dark side. He ordered black coffee and got straight to business. I was hired by your attorney, Catherine Wong, to investigate Vanessa Hayes and her brother Marcus. What I found? He pulled out a thick folder. Well, you should probably sit down. I am sitting down. Then hold on to your coffee. He opened the folder, spreading documents across the table. Bank statements, court records, photographs. As he talked, a picture emerged that was so much worse than I'd imagined. Vanessa Hayes wasn't just greedy. She was a professional con artist. 5 years ago, she married a man named Robert Chen, no relation to you, different family. Robert's father had early-stage Alzheimer's. Within 6 months of the marriage, Vanessa and Marcus convinced Robert to file for conservatorship of his father. They sold his father's house, emptied his bank accounts about $2.3 million, and then Vanessa divorced Robert, taking half in the settlement. The father died 2 years later in a state-run facility. My hand shook, coffee sloshing over the rim of my cup. Before that, there was another case in Arizona. Similar pattern. Elderly widower with a son. Vanessa didn't marry that one, but she worked as his caregiver and convinced the son to sign over power of attorney. They cleaned out his accounts before the family realized what was happening. There was a lawsuit, but it settled out of court. Why haven't they been arrested? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because they're smart. They stay just on the right side of legal. They use conservatorship laws the way they're technically supposed to be used to protect vulnerable adults. It's just that the adults aren't actually that vulnerable, and the protection is really theft. But proving undue influence is incredibly difficult. Usually by the time families realize what's happening, the money's gone, and the elderly person is either dead or too mentally declined to testify. But I fought back. You did, and that's unusual. Most of their marks don't have the resources or mental clarity to protect themselves. You had Catherine Wong, you had Dr. Morrison's evaluation, you had your son on your side. They picked the wrong target this time. He pulled out another document. There's something else. Vanessa has a daughter, 8 years old, named Emily. She's been living with Vanessa's mother in Nevada. Vanessa sends money every month, money she gets from these cons. Daniel never knew about her. A daughter. Vanessa had a daughter she'd never mentioned. A child she'd hidden from my son. Where is Vanessa now? I asked. Las Vegas. She and Marcus have an apartment there. And here's where it gets interesting. Vanessa owes money to some very dangerous people. $150,000 in gambling debts. The debt collectors are getting impatient. I think that's why she rushed the conservatorship attempt. She needed money fast. I sat back, my mind reeling. This woman had infiltrated my family, manipulated my son, nearly destroyed my life, all because she had a gambling problem and a brother willing to help her steal to feed it. What can we do with this information? I asked. Catherine's already shared it with the district attorney. They're building a case. With what happened to you, combined with the other victims who might be willing to come forward now that there's momentum, they might actually be able to charge Vanessa and Marcus with elder abuse conspiracy and fraud. Will Daniel be implicated? No. My investigation shows clearly that Daniel was a victim too. He didn't know about Vanessa's history or her daughter. He refused to participate in the conservatorship. He's clean. After Thomas left, I sat in the coffee shop for a long time staring at my cold coffee. Part of me felt vindicated. I'd been right to fight back, right to protect myself. But another part of me felt sick. Because Daniel had loved this woman. He'd married her, built a life with her, and all of it had been a lie. When I got home, Daniel was in the kitchen making dinner. Something he'd been doing every night since Vanessa left, trying to take care of me the way I'd always taken care of him. "Mom, you okay? You look pale." "Sit down," I said. "We need to talk." I told him everything. About Thomas Wright, about Vanessa's history, about the other families she'd targeted, about Emily. With each revelation, Daniel's face grew paler, his expression more devastated. When I finished, he just sat there staring at the table. "I married a monster," he finally said. "You married a woman who lied to you about everything." How did I not see it? How did I not know? Because she's a professional, Daniel. This is what she does. You're not stupid for being fooled. You're human. He stood up, abruptly walked to the sink, braced his hands on the counter. His shoulders shook. I went to him, put my hand on his back. "She has a daughter," he whispered. "A little girl. And she used that little girl's support money to gamble. What kind of mother does that, a sick one?" He turned to face me, tears streaming down his face. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I brought her into your life. I almost let her destroy you. If you hadn't overheard us that day, if you hadn't fought back. But I did, and you helped me. Daniel, listen to me. What Vanessa did is not your fault. What Marcus did is not your fault. You made mistakes, yes, but you also made the right choice when it mattered most. You chose me over her. You chose truth over money. That's who you really are." I don't feel like I know who I really am anymore. Then maybe it's time to figure that out. 2 weeks later, Eleanor called with a proposal. "Maggie, I've been thinking. You have that house in Palm Springs now from Lorraine. Have you been out there yet?" "No, I've been dealing with lawyers and investigators, and go," Eleanor said firmly. "Get out of that house in Bakersfield. It's full of ghosts and bad memories. Go to Palm Springs. See what Lorraine left you. Take some time for yourself." But Daniel is a 34-year-old man who needs to figure out his own life. Maggie, you've spent 8 years putting everyone else first. Your patients at the hospital. Lorraine, Daniel, even Vanessa in a twisted way. When are you going to put yourself first? Her words hit me like a slap. When had I last done something just for me? When had I last thought about what I wanted instead of what everyone else needed? "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think. Do. I'll help Daniel find an apartment. You go to Palm Springs." That night I made a decision. I called Catherine Wong. "I want to sell the house in Bakersfield," I said. "And I want to move to Palm Springs. Can you handle that?" "Of course. But Maggie, are you sure that house has a lot of history?" "Exactly. Too much history. Too many ghosts. I need a fresh start." "What about Daniel?" I looked out my bedroom window at the backyard where Richard used to push Sarah on the swing set, where we'd had birthday parties and barbecues and ordinary, beautiful moments of family life that would never come again. Daniel needs a fresh start, too. This house isn't good for either of us anymore. We're both stuck here living in the past, surrounded by what we've lost. Maybe if we let go of the house, we can start to heal. 3 weeks later, I stood in the driveway of my Bakersfield house for the last time. The sold sign gleamed in the morning sun. A young family, parents and 2 kids, would be moving in next month. They'd fill these rooms with new memories, new laughter. They'd paint over the height marks on the doorframe and replace the worn carpet in the hallway, and have no idea that a girl named Sarah once raced toy cars across these floors. Daniel stood beside me, his own car packed with boxes. He'd found a small apartment in Fresno near Eleanor. A fresh start, we'd called it. A chance to rebuild his life without the weight of the past crushing down on every decision. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "But I'm going anyway." He hugged me tight. "I'll call you when I'm settled. And Mom, thank you. For not giving up on me. For fighting back. For showing me what strength really looks like. I love you, Daniel. No matter what. Remember that. I love you too, Mom." We stood there for a moment, mother and son, surrounded by ghosts and memories, and then we got in our separate cars and drove away from the house that had held our family together and also torn us apart. The drive to Palm Springs took 3 hours. As I left Bakersfield behind, I felt something loosen in my chest. The familiar landmarks disappeared in my rearview mirror: the hospital where I'd worked for 35 years, the church where we'd buried Sarah and Richard, the streets I'd driven 10,000 times. I put on the radio, old country music, the kind Richard used to love, and I sang along off-key and loud, and I cried and laughed at the same time because I was 68 years old and finally doing something just for myself. Lorraine's house, my house now, was perfect. A modest 2-bedroom bungalow in a quiet neighborhood where the bougainvillea climbed the walls and hummingbirds visited the garden every morning. The furniture was simple but comfortable. The kitchen had windows overlooking the mountains. The backyard had a small patio with a table and chairs, perfect for morning coffee. I walked through the rooms, touching surfaces, opening closets, and in the master bedroom I found a letter on the dresser. My name written in Lorraine's shaky handwriting. My dear Maggie, if you're reading this, you've made it to Palm Springs. I hope you like the house. I bought it in 1989 when I was 52 years old and finally brave enough to leave the city where I'd spent my whole life. I was scared to start over, but it was the best decision I ever made. I know you're probably feeling guilty right now. Guilty about leaving Bakersfield. Guilty about the house you sold. Guilty about Daniel. Stop it. You've earned the right to be selfish. You've spent your whole life serving others as a nurse, as a mother, as a wife, as a niece, who visited an old woman nobody else cared about. Now it's your turn. Live, Maggie. Not for Daniel, not for the memory of Richard or Sarah, but for yourself. Plant a garden. Take a pottery class. Sleep until noon if you want to. Eat cake for breakfast. Do all the things you never let yourself do because you were too busy being responsible. I wish I could be there to see it. But I'm gone now and I'm at peace because I know you'll be okay. You're stronger than you think. The safety deposit box at First National Bank has one more thing for you. The key is in the kitchen drawer next to the stove. Don't open it until you're ready. You'll know when. All my love always, Lorraine. P.S. There's a hummingbird feeder in the garage. Put it up. They'll come. They always do. I sat on Lorraine's bed, my bed, and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Then I washed my face, found the hummingbird feeder, and hung it in the garden. Within an hour they came. Tiny emerald and ruby jewels hovering in midair, their wings beating so fast they blurred. I sat on the patio and watched them, these impossible little creatures, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The first few weeks in Palm Springs were strange. I'd wake up and forget where I was reaching for Richard before remembering he'd been dead for 8 years. I'd start to call for Daniel to come down for breakfast before remembering he was in Fresno building his own life. But slowly I adjusted. I found a grocery store I liked, a coffee shop with good muffins, a library with a book club that met every Thursday. I met my neighbors, a retired couple named Jim and Carol, who invited me to dinner, a young woman named Sophia who was training for a marathon and asked if I wanted to walk with her in the mornings. I said yes to things I would have said no to before. Yes to book club, even though I hadn't read for pleasure in years. Yes to morning walks, even though my knees ached. Yes to dinner parties, even though I was terrified of being the odd single woman out. And gradually I started to feel like myself again. Not the self I'd been before Sarah died, that person was gone forever, but a new self. Stronger maybe, more careful with my trust, but also more aware of my own worth. Daniel called every Sunday evening at 7 p.m., just like Lorraine used to call me. We'd talk for an hour about his job, his therapy sessions, his slowly rebuilding life. He'd joined a support group for people who'd been in emotionally abusive relationships. He was learning, he said, to recognize the red flags he'd ignored with Vanessa. My therapist says I was trying to fix Vanessa the way I couldn't fix Sarah, he told me one Sunday. That I was attracted to her because she needed me, because saving her felt like a way to atone for not saving my sister. Are you learning to forgive yourself? I asked. I'm trying. Some days are better than others. That's all any of us can do. 3 months after moving to Palm Springs, I finally felt ready to open Lorraine's safety deposit box. I drove to First National Bank, presented my key and identification, and a bank employee led me to a small private room with the box. Inside were documents, audio recordings on small cassette tapes, a flash drive, and another letter. Maggie, by now you've settled into the house and started your new life. Good. Now you need to know the truth about Vanessa Hayes. 3 months before I died, Vanessa came to visit me, alone. She said she wanted to get to know family better, but I could tell something was off. She asked too many questions about my properties. my finances, whether I had a will. She asked about you, your health, your money, whether Daniel was your only heir. I didn't tell her anything useful, but I knew then what she was. I've lived 84 years, Maggie. I've seen con artists before, so I hired a private investigator, Thomas Wright. He found things that terrified me. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't have enough proof, and I didn't want to drive a wedge between you and Daniel without being certain. So I did what I could. I changed my will to leave everything to you directly, not to Daniel. That way, if something happened to you and Daniel inherited, Vanessa couldn't get her hands on it. But I also did something else. I set up a hidden camera in my living room and recorded my next conversation with Vanessa. I told her I was considering changing my will, and she... Well, you should listen to the recordings. They're evidence if you ever need them. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you more directly, but I was dying and I was scared, and this was the best I could do. Use this information however you see fit. Give it to the police, or don't, but know that you were right to fight back. Know that your instincts were correct. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. You're a woman who recognized danger and protected herself. Never apologize for that. With all my love, Lorraine. My hands shook as I picked up the flash drive. The bank employee brought me a laptop and I plugged it in. The video quality was grainy, clearly from a hidden camera, but the audio was crystal clear. Lorraine looking frail and thin, sitting in her living room, and Vanessa leaning forward, her voice syrupy sweet. So Lorraine, have you thought about what we discussed about updating your will? I'm still considering it, Lorraine said carefully. You know Margaret is getting older. She's alone and she has health problems. What if something happens to her? Wouldn't you want to make sure Daniel is taken care of? Margaret is perfectly capable of taking care of herself. Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course, but you know how elderly people can be. They get confused, make poor decisions. Margaret's already showing signs. She told Daniel herself she sometimes forgets things. With her anxiety and high blood pressure, it's only a matter of time before she needs more help than she can manage on her own. Are you suggesting she's incompetent? I'm suggesting she's vulnerable, and when people are vulnerable, sometimes they need family to step in, to protect them. Daniel and I are prepared to do that, take care of her, make sure her final years are comfortable, but it would be so much easier if we had the resources to provide her with the best care. If you left your estate to Daniel instead of to Margaret, we could make sure she gets everything she needs. Lorraine's voice turned cold. You mean you could put her in a nursing home and spend her inheritance? Vanessa's mask slipped for just a second. That's not what I'm 84 years old, child, not stupid. I know exactly what you're planning, and it's not going to work. I don't know what you think you heard, but I heard a con artist trying to manipulate an old woman. But here's the thing, I've already changed my will. Everything goes to Margaret, not Daniel, not you. And I've documented this conversation. So if anything happens to my niece, anything at all, the police will know exactly where to look. Vanessa stood up, her face ugly with anger. You'll regret this. You're a lonely old woman nobody cares about. Margaret only visits you out of obligation. Do you really think she loves you? I think she's a better person than you'll ever be, Lorraine said quietly. Now get out of my house. The video ended. I sat in that small bank room and sobbed. Lorraine had known. She'd protected me even when I didn't know I needed protection. She'd loved me enough to set a trap for Vanessa to gather evidence, to do everything in her power to keep me safe. And she'd been right about all of it. I called Catherine Wong from the bank parking lot. I have evidence, I told her, from Lorraine. Video of Vanessa trying to manipulate her into changing her will, audio recordings, everything. Send it to me immediately, Catherine said. The DA's building a case against Vanessa and Marcus. This could be exactly what they need. 2 weeks later, Vanessa Hayes and Marcus Hayes were arrested in Las Vegas. The charges: conspiracy to commit elder abuse, attempted fraud, and a string of related offenses spanning 3 states. The DA had found 2 other families willing to testify, families who'd been victimized the same way I almost was. Daniel called me when he heard the news. It's really over, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She's really gone. How do you feel? I asked. Relieved, angry, sad, grateful, all of it at once. Is that normal? Completely normal. You loved someone who turned out to be someone else entirely. That's a lot to process. My therapist says I need to forgive myself for being fooled, that loving someone, even the wrong someone, isn't a character flaw. Your therapist is right. I know, but knowing it and feeling it are different things. Give it time, honey. Give yourself grace. 6 months after moving to Palm Springs, I hosted my first dinner party. I invited Eleanor, who drove down from Fresno, Jim and Carol from next door, Sophia, my walking partner, Catherine Wong and Thomas Wright, who'd become unlikely friends during the investigation, and Daniel, who brought his new girlfriend, a kind, quiet woman named Amy, who taught 2nd grade and loved hiking. We ate on the patio under string lights I'd hung myself. I served pot roast because some traditions are worth keeping, and chocolate cake from a recipe Sarah used to love. We talked and laughed and told stories, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. After dinner, Daniel found me in the kitchen washing dishes. "Let me help," he said, picking up a towel. We worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the sounds of conversation and laughter drifting in from the patio. "Mom," Daniel said finally, "I need to tell you something." My heart clenched. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need you to know that I'm seeing a lawyer tomorrow about Vanessa's divorce settlement. And I'm giving her nothing. She's going to prison for at least 7 years. Her claim to any inheritance from you is legally null. But more than that, I don't want her to have anything of yours. Not 1 penny. She doesn't deserve it." "Good," I said firmly. "There's something else. I've been saving money from my new job, and I want to pay you back for the house." "Daniel, no. Please let me finish. Not pay you back for the full value, obviously. I can't afford that. But I want to contribute something, even if it's just a symbolic amount. Because you kept that house for years, so I'd always have a home to come back to. You worked yourself to exhaustion to pay for it, and I almost let Vanessa take it from you. I need to make that right in whatever small way I can." I looked at my son, at the man he was becoming, the man he'd always had the potential to be before grief and guilt and Vanessa had twisted him into someone else. "Okay," I said, "but on one condition. Anything. You put half of whatever you were going to give me into a college fund. For when you and Amy have kids." His eyes widened. "Kids, Mom, we've only been dating 4 months. I see the way you look at her, and the way she looks at you. I see the way you are when she's around, lighter, happier, more like yourself. I don't know if Amy's the one, but I know you're healing. And someday you'll be ready to build a family. And when you do, I want you to have something to give them. Not guilt, not debt, not the weight of everything that went wrong. Something good." Daniel hugged me tight. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "You're my son. You don't have to deserve my love. You just have to accept it." Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my garden watching the hummingbirds at their feeder. The desert sky was huge and dark and filled with more stars than I'd ever seen in Bakersfield. My phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. "Beautiful evening. You've built something good here, Maggie. I'm proud of you." I smiled and typed back, "Thank you for pushing me to take this leap. I think I'm finally happy." Her response was immediate. "You deserve to be. Now go to bed, old woman. Stop texting me past 9 p.m. I laughed out loud, startling a hummingbird. Inside, I walked through my house, my home now not just Lorraine's. I'd added my own touches over the past 6 months. Photos of Richard and Sarah in the living room, but mixed with new photos of Daniel and Amy, of Eleanor, of my new friends in Palm Springs. A bookshelf filled with novels I'd been meaning to read for years. A pottery class project, a lopsided bowl on the kitchen counter. In my bedroom, I opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside was Lorraine's letter, the one I'd read that first day. I took it out and read it again. "Live, Maggie. Not for Daniel, not for the memory of Richard or Sarah, but for yourself." "I'm trying, Lorraine," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm really trying." And I was. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself. Not just surviving, not just serving others, but actually living. Building a life that was mine on my terms without apology. It wasn't perfect. I still woke up some mornings with my heart aching for Richard, for Sarah, for the family we used to be. I still worried about Daniel, still second-guessed my decisions, still carried the weight of everything that had happened. But I also had moments of pure, unexpected joy. Morning walks with Sophia, book club discussions that went until midnight, sitting in my garden with coffee and watching the sun rise over the mountains. Video calls with Daniel, where we laughed until we cried. Quiet evenings with a good book and the sound of wind chimes on the patio. I had survived. And more than that, I had fought back. When someone tried to take everything from me, I'd protected myself. I'd been strong when I needed to be strategic when I had to be, and merciful when I chose to be. And now I was free. Free from the house full of ghosts. Free from the weight of everyone else's expectations. Free to figure out who Margaret Chen was when she wasn't defined by tragedy and loss. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Chen, this is Grace Hayes. I'm Vanessa's mother." I froze. "What do you want?" "I'm calling to apologize and to ask for your help." "I'm not giving Vanessa money for a lawyer." No, nothing like that. It's about Emily, Vanessa's daughter. She's 8 years old, and with Vanessa in prison, I'm her only guardian. But Mrs. Chen, I'm 62 years old on disability. I can barely afford to feed myself, let alone raise a child. And Emily? She's innocent in all this. She's a sweet little girl who doesn't understand why her mother's gone. My heart twisted. What does this have to do with me? I know this is a lot to ask. I know my daughter tried to destroy your life, but I heard about Daniel, about the trust fund his sister left, about the $50,000 that was supposed to be for his future children. Mrs. Chen Emily is just a little girl who needs a chance Vanessa never gave her. Would you consider helping her? I should have said no immediately, should have hung up the phone and never looked back. This woman's daughter had tried to steal my home, my money, my freedom. Why would I help her grandchild? But then I thought about Sarah, about the college fund Richard and I had started for her, the money that had sat untouched in an account for 12 years, about the scholarship we'd set up in her name, helping other young people get the education Sarah never got to finish. I need to think about it, I said. And I need to talk to Daniel. Of course. Thank you for even considering it. That night I called Daniel. Emily Hayes, I said without preamble. Vanessa's daughter. Her grandmother called me asking for help. Silence on the other end of the line. Daniel, I don't know how to feel about this, he said slowly. Part of me says she's Vanessa's responsibility, not ours. But another part of me thinks, she's just a kid. She didn't choose her mother, just like I didn't choose Sarah's death or Dad's heart attack or any of the things that shaped my life. What if we used Sarah's trust fund? I asked. The money we set aside for her education. We could create a scholarship for Emily. Not give it directly to Vanessa's mother, but set up an education trust. Emily could use it for school, for college, for building a life that's different from her mother's. Sarah would have liked that, Daniel said quietly. She always said she wanted to be a teacher, to help kids. It would be like Sarah's legacy living on. So we do it. Yeah, Mom, we do it. But we do it right, through lawyers with strict guidelines. And Emily never has to know who it's from. It's just a scholarship. No strings, no connection to Vanessa's crimes. Just help for a kid who needs it. Okay, I said. I'll call Catherine in the morning. 2 weeks later, the Sarah Chen Memorial Scholarship was established. $50,000 in a trust fund managed by Catherine Wong, designated for Emily Hayes' education expenses. No contact with the family, no recognition required. Just silent help for a child caught in the crossfire of her mother's crimes. When I told Grace Hayes, she cried on the phone. Thank you, she kept saying. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Emily's going to have a chance now. A real chance. Make sure she knows it's from Sarah Chen, I said. Tell her it's from a girl who loved learning and wanted other kids to have opportunities. That's all she needs to know. I will. And Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry for everything my daughter did, for the pain she caused you and your son. I failed as a mother somewhere along the way, and you paid the price. I'm so sorry. We all do the best we can with what we have, I said. Sometimes our best isn't enough, but we keep trying anyway. 1 year after moving to Palm Springs, I threw a party, a big one. I invited everyone, Eleanor Daniel and Amy Catherine and Thomas Jim and Carol Sophia, my book club friends, people from church neighbors I'd gotten to know over morning walks and backyard conversations. We set up tables in the garden under the bougainvillea. I made pot roast and mashed potatoes and green beans, and everyone brought something to share. There was laughter and music and children running through the yard, Jim and Carol's grandkids visiting for the summer. At sunset, Eleanor stood up and clinked her glass. "A toast," she announced, "to Maggie Chen. A year ago, she was in the fight of her life, protecting herself and her home from people who should have protected her. She was alone, scared, and facing impossible odds. And she won. Not by being cruel or vengeful, but by being smart and strong and knowing her own worth. Maggie, you're an inspiration. You've built a beautiful life here, and we're all honored to be part of it." Everyone raised their glasses. To Maggie, I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were good tears. Happy tears. Daniel stood up next. "I'd like to add something if I can." I looked at him in surprise. A year ago, I was the worst version of myself. I'd let someone manipulate me into betraying the person I loved most in the world. I was drowning in debt and guilt and self-hatred. And my mom, his voice cracked. My mom could have given up on me. Should have, probably. But she didn't. She fought for herself, yes. But she also fought for me. She showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like. She gave me a chance to be better, and I'm trying every day to deserve that chance. He raised his glass. To Mom, the strongest person I know. The applause was thunderous. After the party, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my garden with Eleanor, the two of us, two old women who'd survived more than we should have had to watching the stars come out. "You did good, Maggie," Eleanor said softly. "I had a lot of help. You had people who loved you, but you did the hard work yourself. You protected yourself. You set boundaries. You demanded respect. That's all you." I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago. Scared, alone, folding laundry for people who were planning to steal her life. And then I thought about the woman I was now. Still scared sometimes, still alone in some ways, but also free, strong, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her, not about what they could take from her. "I'm happy," I said, and I realized it was true. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. "Good," Eleanor said. "It's about damn time." We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the wind chimes and the distant sound of traffic on the highway. A hummingbird appeared, even though it was almost dark, and hovered near the feeder for a moment before disappearing into the gathering dusk. "You know what Lorraine told me once," they said. "She said hummingbirds are symbols of resilience. They're tiny and fragile-looking, but they're actually incredibly strong. They can fly backwards, hover in place, survive in extreme conditions. They look delicate, but they're survivors." "Sounds like someone I know," Eleanor said with a smile. I laughed. "Yeah, I guess it does." My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Thanks for tonight, Mom. Amy and I are talking about the future. Nothing concrete yet, but I wanted you to know. I'm happy. Really, genuinely happy. Thank you for not giving up on me." I typed back, "I love you, Daniel. Always have, always will. And I'm proud of the man you're becoming." His response came immediately. "Love you too, Mom. Good night." I set down my phone and looked up at the stars, so bright and clear in the desert sky. Somewhere up there, I like to think Richard and Sarah were watching. Proud, maybe. Or at least at peace, knowing I was finally okay. "I did it," I whispered to them. "I survived. I fought back. And I'm okay now. We're all going to be okay." Eleanor stood up, stretched. "I should head back to the hotel. Long drive tomorrow." "Stay," I said impulsively. "Stay another day. We'll have breakfast on the patio, walk to the farmer's market, waste the whole day doing nothing productive. When was the last time either of us did that?" Eleanor smiled. "You're finally learning, Maggie Chen. Took you long enough." Better late than never. That night I dreamed about my family. Not the nightmares I'd had for years, Sarah's car crash, Richard's heart attack, Daniel's betrayal, but good dreams. Memories of backyard barbecues and birthday parties and ordinary beautiful moments when we were all together and whole. In the dream, we were having dinner at the old house in Bakersfield. Sarah was 16, laughing at one of Richard's terrible jokes. Daniel was 20, home from college, teasing his sister about her new boyfriend. And I was there younger, watching them all with a full heart, not knowing that most of this would soon be taken from me. But then the dream shifted. Suddenly we were in Palm Springs in my new house, and Sarah and Richard were there, but different, translucent like ghosts, but smiling. And Daniel was there, too solid and real, with Amy beside him. And Eleanor and all my new friends, and even little Emily Hayes, who I'd never met, but who existed somewhere living a better life because of choices we'd made. "It's okay, Mom," Sarah said in the dream. "You can let go now. You can be happy. We want you to be happy." "We're proud of you," Richard added. "You fought like hell. You protected yourself. You protected Daniel. You did everything right." I woke up crying, but they weren't sad tears. They were relief, release, permission maybe to finally stop punishing myself for surviving when they hadn't. The morning sun was streaming through my bedroom window, and I could hear the hummingbirds already at their feeder. I got up, made coffee, and carried it out to the patio. Eleanor was already there, reading the newspaper, her own coffee steaming beside her. "Good morning," she said without looking up. "I hope you don't mind. I raided your kitchen. Mi casa es su casa." We sat in comfortable silence, two old friends, survivors of loss and betrayal, and all the ways life can break you if you let it. But we hadn't let it break us. We'd bent, yes, we'd cracked, but we hadn't shattered, and that was something worth celebrating. "Eleanor," I said, "thank you." "For what?" "For being there, for pushing me to fight back, for believing I was strong enough even when I didn't believe it myself." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "That's what family does, Maggie. Real family. Not the kind you're born into, but the kind you choose." "The kind you choose," I repeated softly, and I realized that was exactly what I'd built here. A chosen family. People who loved me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. People who saw my worth and celebrated it instead of trying to exploit it. Daniel, Eleanor, Amy, Catherine, Thomas, Sophia, Jim, and Carol. Even little Emily Hayes, who I'd probably never meet, but who was connected to me now through Sarah's memory and our shared decision to help someone who needed it. This was my family. Imperfect, complicated, but real and chosen and mine. A hummingbird landed on the feeder, its iridescent feathers catching the morning light. It fed for a moment, then looked directly at me before flying away, a flash of emerald and ruby against the blue desert sky. I thought about Lorraine's words. Hummingbirds are symbols of resilience. I thought about the year I'd survived. The betrayal, the fight, the victory, the healing, the rebuilding. I thought about the life I'd built from the ashes of everything I'd lost, and I smiled. Because I was Margaret Chen, retired nurse, widow, mother, survivor, fighter. I'd worked for 35 years, buried a daughter and husband, protected my home and freedom from people who tried to steal them, and built a new life in a new place with a chosen family who loved me. I was 59 years old, and I was just getting started. "So," Eleanor said, setting down her newspaper, "what should we do today?" I looked at the mountains in the distance, the hummingbirds at the feeder, the garden I'd planted with my own hands. "Anything we want," I said. "Absolutely anything we want." And we did. The end.